In this video, we unveil chilling true stories from Airbnb stays that turned into nightmares. Brace yourself for unsettling tales that will make you question the safety of your next getaway. If you enjoy creepy true stories, hit that subscribe button and support our channel. Buckle up everyone, this one really sucks. This actually just happened over the holiday weekend, the 4th of July. We stayed in a location that was pretty remote in the desert. Wanted to get away from the fireworks that scare our two dogs. It was myself and my wife, our 2-year-old daughter with special needs, and our dogs. The stay was amazing. We stayed 3 nights, 4 days. We loved it. We decided we would grill most of the time, so we never used the stove except for 2 times. I was grilling some burgers on the grill and had some bacon going. Everything was set, but the bacon was taking a little long. Half cooked, I brought it inside to finish it off. Right away, alarms start going off. I turned off the burner on the stove and proceeded to finish the bacon on the grill. No big deal. Wife says, "It smells like propane." I said, "Maybe it hasn't been used in a while, let's air out the home." Opened all the windows. Within minutes, the smell was gone. No big deal. On our last night, we decided we would cook inside. But after a long day, 120 degrees outside during the day, fresher at night, we decided to just have some cereal and go out for breakfast before we leave. Next morning, our daughter woke up pretty early, 6 a.m. or so. I start getting everything ready to go home. I cleaned the whole kitchen, picked up everything. We had to remove a glass table from the living room for safety issues for our baby, toddlers. So I made sure everything was just as it was. We aren't monsters. This is someone's home. We are respectful of that. About 7:30, wife wakes up and starts feeding the baby, and I say, "Coffee?" She's like, "No, I'm okay, you go ahead." The whole time there, I just used the provided coffee maker. That morning, I wanted to be fancy and use the French press. Started to boil the water. Within minutes, the whole home was filled with the smell of propane. I opened the windows and reached out to the host, letting them know, and to instruct me where the shutoff valve was. No immediate response. I turned off all the lights in case it was a gas leak. Wife takes our child and fur babies to another part of the house and keeps the door closed. This room had access to the outside, so she started to load up our car. With no response from the host, I messaged them on Instagram, no reply. Finally, at 8:30 or so, they respond. "Valve is shut off." We leave point 1. Minutes into driving. My wife says, "I'm really dizzy and nauseous." I said, "I am too." Our dogs were crying, and our baby was quietly sitting in the car seat with a look. You know the look, the "I'm about to hurl" look. She starts throwing up. We realized we could have poisoning. We immediately drove to the nearest fire station where they assessed our child. We were hours away from our actual home and her care team. The fire department called our hospital and they said we needed to take her to the nearest hospital. They wouldn't let us take her ourselves. The ambulance arrived and off we went. Baby is crying non-stop. As we arrived, my child became unresponsive for what seemed like forever, but was in actuality 2 to 3 mins. She was on oxygen and finally responded. Hospital diagnosed her with cerebral hypoxia. Not enough oxygen was getting to her brain. Host offered a $50 refund so we can buy a nice lunch, and Airbnb gave us $132 refund. I feel like all this is not right. Our child could have died. We have spent the last 2 days still dizzy with headaches. Our dogs are still not fully recovered. Never again. Ever. I feel like we were brushed aside. Are we overreacting? Traveled to Bahamas on vacation with my girlfriend last week and rented a little place beside the homeowner from a very popular rental site, Airbnb. The first day was okay, but the guy, Jan, seemed a little off, over the top stuff about God, trying to give us medications, telling me to work out more, etc. enough, so that it was a topic of discussion between the girlfriend and I. When we finally got the actual address, we were quite surprised to see it was not only a rental, but he was running a mushroom therapy center. Strange stuff. We were there for not even 24 hours yet, and after coming back from a relaxing beach walk, he invited us in for a drink. We came in through the back door which faced the beach. He seemed pretty high-strung and started to show me a news feed on his home computer about Iran attacking Israel and possibly being the start of a larger war or something, while my girlfriend was speaking with his wife, Alec, about the dogs they had there. Pretty innocuous stuff. I politely disagreed, saying there was a lot of distance between the two countries and that is unlikely to escalate if true. This is when he lost it. Pushed me pretty hard out the sliding door, causing me to drop a glass, then went and got a short sword and started threatening us, telling us to leave. At this exact time, a friend of his, named Richard, came to their front door asking, "What's wrong?" We, girlfriend and I, were cleaning up the broken glass and trying to defuse the situation by taking calmly to the crazy host, but decided to make a hasty retreat out the back. When we looked up and noticed blood streaming down Richard's hand, things got real very fast. The homeowner host chased all three of us outside and gave Richard another more serious slice on the left arm, severing an artery. We wisely made our way to a safer area down the street off property while trying to apply a belt to staunch the bleeding, to which I was successful. With help from a few kind bystanders that stopped driving to see what was going on, we took him to a nearby military base to the medical station there, as the local ambulance was taking far too long to show up. After dropping Richard off, we came back with a police escort to get our belongings. I spoke with the wife, who was now hiding in our rental, just a short distance away from the main house, to allow us to retrieve our things, but she refused to let me in. The police at this time were entering the home, and we heard a gunshot. We both looked at each other with a strange combination of disbelief, horror, and relief that the ordeal was finally over. Around this time, and much to our surprise, Jan came out behind us from the road with the sword and chased us again until the cops subdued him. The wife, with baby in arms, attacked the police while they were in the process of restraining our insane host. She then picked up the sword, which was lying on the ground, and started to go towards the distracted police. I deftly snatched it out of her hand and threw it into the police truck. I helped restrain her, and the ordeal finally came to a conclusion. I started recording after I got my phone out of the rental just in time to catch him being restrained and her shouting, "He's God, listen to him." We got in the car and left the place with our belongings and went to find alternative accommodations very shaken. Filed a police report detailing the events that transpired. My apologies for the long story, but I'm trying to describe the horror show that happened to us. Coral Harbor, Bahamas on the 7th of August. We contacted Airbnb. After much back and forth, they refunded my money for the property rental and said they would pay up to $325 per day for 3 days elsewhere at a hotel. After more back and forth, they said they would cover the rest of our 6 days up to $325 per day. Absolute nightmare. I was in Miami during a major festival weekend. I had booked a hotel through my friend at a deep discount. She works for a major hotel chain, but got into the city late, so was unable to claim it. I also lost my credit card recently, so was unable to book a hotel due to need to put up a deposit. Took a quick look at Airbnb and saw a super 3-bedroom place with balcony for a super reasonable price. Given the festivities of the weekend, I booked it immediately and showed up 30 minutes later. I got there and was super impressed. Whole 3-bedroom for just me and my girlfriend for the weekend. It was amazing. We had tickets to the festival to 2 days later and wanted to explore the city beforehand, so we decided to call it early. As my girlfriend was taking a shower and I was in the living room watching, a whole family walks in speaking next to no English. A son, married couple, and an elderly man. The wife, who speaks the most English, immediately tells me that the living room is off limits for guests and that I should move my things out of the master bedroom into one of the guest bedrooms, as that's where I'll be staying. It was listed as an entire place, but whatever. It was the only thing available, and it was actually a really nice apartment, so I wasn't overly bothered. The next morning, the elderly man barges into our room without knocking, saying he must clean our room in broken English. It hasn't even been 12 hours at this point. We say we don't need cleaning, but he says he must clean the room every day. Okay? We tell him we'll go get breakfast soon and he can come clean then. We go get breakfast and come back to actually prepare for the day. The elderly man tells me to meet him on the balcony. Through a translator, he tells me that the price on Airbnb is not the real price, and that we must pay him double the price to him in cash. Keep in mind, we thought the price was reasonable for a private apartment, then figured the price was fairly expensive for a private room with shared bathroom. But given the weekend and the luxury apartment, we weren't upset about it. At double the price, we were completely being ripped off. I agreed, but only out of desperation. I was broke and in college and literally couldn't go anywhere else. Our second morning was the first day of the festival. We were really excited, so we went into our backpacks and looked for our tickets. Both of them are gone. Looking back, I know exactly where I kept both tickets. They were literally there the day before. However, at the time, I felt like I lost them. So we decided to just show up to the festival and reclaim our tickets through the ticket office using our IDs. When I got to the festival, they told me the tickets were already used. What? Meaning the elderly man took the tickets and sold them or gave them away. Luckily, they were nice enough to let us in the festival each day, but it took 2+ hours each day standing in will call. I didn't really want to pay the extra cash fee for the Airbnb. However, after having $800 worth of tickets stolen from me, I definitely wasn't paying anything extra. The last day of the festival was Sunday, and we were due to leave Wednesday. Starting Sunday night, the elderly man started sleeping in the living room, almost as if to make sure we don't leave without paying. He didn't even live in the apartment. Despite that, we woke up early the morning before checkout and told him we're going to Key West. Obviously, he didn't believe us, but he wasn't going to stop us. He followed us all the way downstairs, tried to hold our luggage, tried to hop in front of our car. Luckily, we were able to pull off without any major issues or violence. Later on, the host, the wife, not the elderly man, I tried to say we damaged the room and claimed the damage amount was the precise amount they requested I pay them in cash. How convenient. We didn't pay shit. Never reported the incident to Airbnb as I didn't really have proof he stole the tickets, didn't pay the extra cash fee, and felt the price we did pay was fairly reasonable for what we got during such a festive weekend. I believe their account was shut down shortly after, so it was water under the bridge after a while. That was my first time in Miami, and I still have a very sour taste of the city after that experience. I was just there last week on a long layover, and I'm still not a fan of the place. It was the summer of 2018. It was my brother's bachelor's party. He invites me and his 5 friends to this remote rural cabin far in the deep forest of Wyoming. I wish I remember what the place was called. We rent the cabin for a week, not a soul for miles. It was a nice place with a small river a walking distance away. The first 3 days we hike, play football, and have a barbecue. The last 2 days we spent it on binge drinking heavily, calling our exes, and speaking on our past experiences with friends. One by one, we pass out in various places in the cabin. 2 of my brother's friends in the living room couch, others made it to the rooms. Luckily, I made it to my room in the 2nd floor of the cabin. It was around 4 in the morning. I wake up with this incredible urge to throw up. I rush to the bathroom and vomit everything. Feeling a lot better, I was up and shuffled back to my room, when suddenly something catches my eye. A man around my age, 24 to 26, white, with a simple t-shirt, shorts, and no shoes from what I faintly remember, carrying a flashlight, emitting a red light in the living room, shining it on my brother's friends who were sleeping on the couch. The red glow of his flashlight illuminated him that I can clearly see it was not someone we knew. Mind you, we are all brown Latinos. If there was a white guy in our group, we would know. I rubbed my eyes to get a better view of what I just saw and lean over the balcony to see what the hell was it that I saw. Nothing. Pitch darkness. Silence. I stay at the balcony for a good 15 seconds trying to get a better view. The switch was at the bottom of the stairs. I go to my room to find my phone, only to realize I didn't bring to my room. I sit in silence for a very long time trying to see if I could hear anything. I did not hear a single noise. No footsteps, no doors, no windows opening, nothing. I didn't go back to sleep after that. When the morning came around, I go out and see everything the same, no break-ins, no damage to the windows or doors, nothing. I tell my brother what I saw, and he said it was a bad dream. My brother's friends say they would have heard the guy and kick his ass, especially since he had a red flashlight shining it on them. Till this day, I never saw the dude's face. IDK, how the hell he got to the cabin with just a t-shirt and shorts, and what the hell he was doing so far in the wilderness with a red flashlight. Or how the hell he got out without making a noise. My daughter and I just came home from our trip to Virginia, where we had booked an Airbnb for 6 nights. We left after the 3rd night. The host had the typical Southern hospitality personality, but something was off that first night. The door code used was a string of 7 numbers that she had memorized. but was nearly impossible for me to remember. I ended up locking ourselves out upon arrival and unloading, and had to walk over to the host's home to request the code again. She welcomed us into our home and then began asking questions. However, she let it be known the questions were directed at my daughter, 8, and I should remain silent. That set off alarm bells there. Also, upon arrival, the host had mentioned that we should close the curtains to the house, even though it's a safe place, because we are 2 girls. Mind you, there were no other homes around as it was a huge private property. We walked back over to where we were staying and re-entered the premises. That first night, I kept hearing what sounded like a large bug with a hard shell continuously flying into the mini split in the bedroom. However, after 18 hours of travel, I was too tired to care. The second night was a different story. The bathroom attached to the room on the second floor kept having a metallic tinkering noise while we were in bed. My daughter thankfully slept through it. However, I kept experiencing anxiety and feeling unsettled. I tried to tell myself I was just exhausted still and feeling anxious about traveling. During the 2 days we came and left, a fan I left on was turned off every time we arrived back. There was a small extendable mirror, the only mirror, in the bathroom that one could also tilt up and down. The mirror kept being tilted down towards a child's level. I assumed it was my daughter until I tilted it back the final day there. I went downstairs to where my daughter was coloring and came back upstairs to it, tilted again. Finally, the third night was the last straw. After feeling for those prior days that we were constantly being watched, my daughter went to take a shower and said to me, "I am closing the bathroom doors so the lightning bugs can't watch me." My daughter is very extroverted and attached to me. She never wants the bathroom door closed when showering. This let me know she too felt something, but didn't have words to explain it. We finally went to bed and she fell asleep fast. However, I once again couldn't sleep because of anxiety and began experiencing panic attacks, which I am not prone to. Then the noises began, only worse than the prior 2 nights. The metallic tinkering noise in the bathroom grew louder and faster. I tried to tell myself it was a mouse. However, I have slept in cabins with mice, and they leave droppings, make squeaks, and you can hear them scurry. None of that happened. Then I heard what sounded like someone tinkering with the items left on the bathroom counter, and it sounded like they dropped a glass. Next, I heard the closet door across from the bed open, but my suitcases were in the way, and I heard the door hit them. These noises went on for hours. Everything inside me told me to run, protect my daughter, and get out as soon as possible. The next morning, I went into the bathroom, and there were a child's muddy footprints coming out of the shower and onto a white towel laid in front of the shower. It was not there the night before. I tried to explain it away, but I couldn't. My daughter had not played in any mud any of those days, and even if she had, there would have been muddy footprints from the front door where we took our shoes off. I immediately began packing our bags to never return again. After 2 nights of not returning, the host messaged me and offered an additional night free on her. Obviously, I declined. Do I mention anything to the host? Do I leave a review? It took me several days to shake the feeling of this experience. It was so scary that I may never stay in an Airbnb again. The town is called Bisbee, Arizona. It's a small town tucked into the mountains near the Mexican border, less than 20 miles away from the famed town of Tombstone. I'll give a brief history, but if you ever want to fall down an internet rabbit hole, the town's full history is pretty fascinating. Copper and other valuable minerals were discovered there in 1877 and a mining camp sprung up. The population swelled significantly over the next couple decades, and at one point the population was bigger than San Francisco. The problem was that they crammed this population into what is effectively a canyon. The town is literally built into the sides of the canyon with front door steps leading to your neighbor's roof in the lot below. With the population surge came crime, disease, sanitation issues, etc. Not to mention the toxic fumes and smoke that came with the mining operations. People were making money hand over fist while living in absolute squalor and misery for quite some time. They mined there continuously until 1974 and dug one of the largest open pit mines in America. When the copper ran out, the mining company up and left and basically sold the whole town back to the townspeople, and they turned it into a fun, artsy, hippie party town. Some world-renowned artists live there, including the comedian Doug Stanhope. This year was the third year in a row my wife and I had gone down there for the 4th of July. The trip has become sort of a tradition. This year we stayed at an Airbnb that was a house built in 1901. It was actually one of the first houses built on the main street through town. I'd like to preface that overall I've always been a skeptic when it comes to the paranormal. I've always found it entertaining, but felt that ultimately it was probably bullshit. My wife also felt the same way. It would take a very concrete experience for me to fully believe. Well, let me tell you about my experiences over the past couple days and nights that changed my outlook quite a bit. So the first evening we were there, we were just kind of milling about deciding what we were going to do for the evening. I was in the kitchen and I distinctly heard footsteps on the hardwood floors. I absolutely thought my wife was walking up behind me and even felt the presence of someone there. I turned around and there was no one there, and she was laying in bed on her phone. We chalked it up to leftover thunder from a storm that had just passed, or maybe old plumbing. Later that night when we were getting into bed, we were plugging our phones in and testing out light switches and such. I switched my light on and we both heard a weird scratching sound in the wall. I even jokingly said, "Damn, I hope that's not wires arcing in the wall or something." It definitely wasn't wires arcing, as I am familiar with that sound, but the sound was definitely along the same lines. The next morning at breakfast, my wife mentions that she had trouble sleeping because of very vivid and intense nightmares that took place in the house. She said they were those type of dreams where you're not sure if you're awake or asleep. It was enough to visibly shake her, and she's not an easily shaken woman. The next night rolls around, last night, and we go to bed around 10 p.m. or so. I drifted off to sleep for what felt like maybe 30 minutes or so before I was woken up by multiple itchy, ticklish feelings all over my body. At first, I chalked it up to my sensitive skin against sheets I'm not used to. I've had that happen before, but this time it was different. Every time I would scratch the spot where I had the feeling, it would instantly move to another part of my body. It felt like someone was intentionally trying to aggravate me. I also had slept in the same bed a few times before this with no issue. Dealing with this made me toss and turn for a couple hours until I finally had it and got up to find my wife awake as well. She was having the same nightmares as the night before and couldn't sleep. She also had a deep uneasiness about the mirrors hung around the house. Now that we were awake, she went out on the porch to have a smoke, and I stayed in bed scrolling through my phone, and while I was doing this, I saw a person walk across the foot of my bed out of the corner of my eye. I also felt the presence of someone walking in. The airflow from the AC even changed slightly. It was vivid enough that I 110% thought it was my wife walking in, and my stomach sank like a rock when I realized she was still out on the porch. I thought it might have been a glare from my phone, but I tried every which way to recreate it and was unable to. Both of us being unable to sleep, we started talking about stuff. Now mind you, we rarely if ever argue or fight, and we definitely don't get angry and things don't get heated, especially over topics like the ones we were discussing. As the conversation went on, this weird negative energy started to develop, and the conversation started turning south. We both kind of snapped out of it, thought about the events leading up to this, and decided to pack up and nope, TF out of there. As we were leaving, my wife went back in to grab one last thing and heard multiple footsteps around her, and had the distinct feeling she was being chased out. We drove back to Tucson in the dead of night, and are both still sitting here and still in a state of shock about what we experienced. In November of 2021, I traveled from Philly to Las Vegas to compete in a jiu-jitsu tournament. I often traveled across the country and usually stayed with other teams to save money. However, this time, for various reasons, I had to stay alone. I hastily booked an Airbnb not far from the Vegas Strip without realizing that the neighborhood wasn't the greatest. I considered canceling and booking something else, but went against my instincts, rationalizing that it was close to everything I needed and that I wouldn't be spending much time there anyway. Upon arrival, I didn't see the host. I wouldn't have known who to look for anyway, since the Airbnb profile picture was of a flower. The host provided me with the key code to the room a small studio apartment that shared a wall with the host's house. There was only one door in and out of the studio. The first red flag was that the key code for the door lock was 1,234,567. I found that odd, but since the Wi-Fi password was password, I figured the host was just an older person who wasn't tech savvy. The reviews for the room were pretty good, so I decided to stay. Around 9:30 p.m., as I was close to falling asleep, I heard tapping on the window in front of my bed. Drapes covered the window, so I couldn't see who was making the noise. I responded by saying, "Huh?" loud enough for whoever it was to hear me. A minute or two passed in silence before the tapping resumed. I said, "Hello?" more loudly, and the tapping stopped. Feeling on edge, I immediately messaged the host, asking if it was them tapping on the window. About an hour later, they responded saying, "I was going to bring you some water, but it seemed like you were asleep, so I left." Still uneasy and unable to sleep, I contemplated going for a walk to the store or taking a shower to clear my mind, but something told me to sit tight and see what happened. About 45 minutes later, around midnight, I heard some noise outside. Then, I distinctly heard someone trying the key code on my door. The attempt failed, but they tried again, and this time I heard the sound of the lock disengaging the door was unlocked. I threw the blankets off me and ran to the door as it was opening toward me, slamming it shut in the person's face. I yelled, "This is my room! Get out of here! Leave!" They responded in a deep voice from the other side of the door. Matal said, "This is my room." Matal was the name of the host. I continued to assert that it was my room and called the cops, speaking loudly enough so they knew I was on the phone with the police. The police eventually arrived and were unsurprised by my story. They said they would stay until I called an Uber to leave. The host was very combative and unapologetic. Their alibi for who that person was changed multiple times. When the Uber arrived, I jumped in, relieved to be getting out of there. It still creeps me out that I never saw the person who was opening my door. I have a feeling it was some kind of setup. If the host knew I was flying in from the East Coast, the 9:30 p.m., tapping on the window would have been equivalent to 12:30 a.m. my time, and the invasion would have been around 3 a.m. Maybe it would have just been a robbery, but it could have been much worse. I once booked an Airbnb by myself in an area in Arizona where I had a job interview. Since it was so far from home, I made a short trip out of it. I chose this specific Airbnb because it was much cheaper than any hotels I could find. It was about half an hour away from where I'd be interviewing, which was fine with me. The property was off some dead-end, secluded road and had a nice view of the desert in the backyard. I brought my laptop with me to get work done at my then current job during the day, so that kept me busy most of the time I was there. I stayed for 3 days. My interview was on the second day, which was a Tuesday. I would be leaving Friday. On Monday, the night before my interview, I was practicing interview questions for this specific company and generally getting some last-minute knowledge on their firm. I was doing this on my laptop in the living room of the little house, probably around 9 p.m., when there was a tap at the window. I say tap because it wasn't exactly a knock. It sounded more like it could have been someone's finger. My head, of course, swung to the left to look at the window in reaction. I didn't see anyone, but it was also pitch black outside. I was kind of scared to look out the window, but I had to be a man and just do it. There was no one, as far as the eye could see, just darkness. Of course, maybe it could have been a bug hitting the window. We've got some pretty nasty bugs here after all. The next day, I got through my interview and thought I did pretty well. So, for the rest of my little trip there, I explored different parts of the town in my car, ate at different restaurants, and sat in the backyard, relaxing in the sun. Little did I know, I was likely being watched while I was in the backyard. That night, I was inside watching Breaking Bad on Netflix when it happened again, a single tap at the window. Now, it was obvious it wasn't a bug. I was even more disturbed now, but once again rushed to the window. Even though I saw no one, that didn't mean someone wasn't out there. I checked the windows by the front door, then opened the door and looked outside for a second. Since there was no one there, I went back inside and then went to the back door. I stepped outside onto the back porch and looked out to the desert behind the house's silence and darkness. And then I heard a clicker sound someone made, like clicking their tongue at the roof of their mouth. It was off in the distance, beyond the light from the house. It was out somewhere in that cold desert. I felt as though someone could be hiding behind any number of those bushes, watching me and toying with me. I yelled out, and almost as if they did it in response, there was another click. I pinpointed the direction it came from and looked that way. I could see someone now, standing not too far away, dressed in dark clothes, blending into the darkness of the desert. I started walking a little closer, then stopped, realizing I didn't want to get any closer to that person. I called out, "You're on private property. I'm going to call the cops if you don't leave." And I saw the person eerily quickly walk away. I theorized it was the Airbnb owner, but obviously that was a stretch, and I didn't really know what to actually think. The night following, I was in my bed on my laptop, watching Breaking Bad again before going to bed. I think I watched 2 episodes, so I was doing this for about an hour and a half. I didn't hear any noises in the house, though I was definitely giving thoughts to that encounter from earlier while watching the show. When I finally turned off the light in the room and tried to fall asleep, within 10 seconds, there was a click sound again muffled from the inside of the closet. I looked at the closet door, which was open, just a crack. Then, in a pretty natural response, I sprang off the bed, still in my PJs, and ran to the car. I sat in the driveway with the car running, and I called 911. I stared at the house as I spoke to the dispatcher, waiting to see if someone would come out because all my stuff was still in there. A police car arrived, and upon entering the house, we did a quick investigation together. It was very small, with not many places to hide. Conclusively, I still packed my stuff and left that place that night for a nearby hotel. I contacted both Airbnb and the host and was only able to get a partial refund for my stay. I still think it may have been the host of the Airbnb. I mean, who else would have access to the house? There were no signs of forced entry, which leads me to believe whoever it was may have had a key. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it was a stranger who snuck in at an opportune time.